All right, good morning, everyone. So today is day 2 of the Quiz Bootcamp. So I'm going to go over a short recap of what we went over last time. It will be very short, and I also want to highlight some resources that we have posted up for you. Then we're going to remind you about the homework and then go over the outline for today and then start earnestly going through the topics for today. So my name is Andrea Kosha. I am from Faculty Technology Center. Hopefully most of you remember me from last time. My colleague Herbert is so graciously looking into the chat and moderating the chat. So hi Herbert. He's waving. The two of us will be working with you today on quizzes. So last time we were working on how to create the quizzes, the bare bones, so to speak. So we were covering how to start creating a quiz, what kind of quizzes there are, the difference between a survey where there's no correct answer, where you're just gathering information from your students, versus a quiz where there is a right answer and a wrong answer kind of idea, and you're trying to test the knowledge and understanding of your students. Then we went into actually all the options you have, such as randomizing the answers for questions like multiple choice, setting up time limits, allowing multiple attempts, setting up when do students get feedback, and if they get feedback, such as knowing which questions they got wrong, which questions they got right. All of that information we went over last time. And we put up some information for you in under the module for day 1. We have posted a link to the recording for day 1. We have also created a summary for you going over what we discussed on day 1 with some very helpful walkthroughs and links that walk you through exactly what we were doing last time as well, in case a web page works better for you rather than going through the recording. You have all that information available for you for the last day, and we'll do something similar for day 2, hopefully by the end of this week. So that is available for you as a resource if you need to recap what we went over last time. As well, in the module section of the Quiz Bootcamp for summer 2020, we have a homework. This is basically the deliverable for the stipend application. It's basically just an assignment where you put in your thoughts on either how to create a brand new survey or quiz for a fall course, or how would you improve a quiz or survey that you already have. So you can pick either topic 1 or topic 2. I would suggest waiting until after day 3 has completed, but you can submit to this at any time before July 31st. So that's the deliverable for the stipend. And today what we're going to cover is delve deeper into the creation of a quiz. So today we're going to cover question groups, what they are, what they're used for, how we can use them. Then we're going to cover question banks. Then we're going to delve into importing, because as a lot of you'll see that you might have previous quizzes or questions that you want to use, or perhaps you have the 2 sections and you want to reuse one of the quizzes from the other section. There are different scenarios under which you might want to copy previous courses of yours. So we're going to delve into how to import a full quiz or how to import question banks and why you would do one versus the other. I'm also going to walk you through, since some of you expressed interest in our technology background survey, I've put it up on what is called Creative Commons, and we'll walk through how you can import that into your own fall or other course. Then we're going to take a short break, about 10 minutes. Then we're going to delve into moderating the quiz. This is a tool where we can look at information as the students are taking the quiz. We can look into how long they've been in the quiz already, or if they've already submitted the quiz, that kind of information while the students are in the quiz. Then we're going to cover how to use this tool in order to allow students to have another attempt or to have extra time, or even take a quiz at a completely different time than their colleagues. Then we're going to dig into Lockdown Browser, which is a specialty browser that locks the student away from using their computer to reach websites or run any software, things like that. And we're going to have you guys take a very short quiz, just like last time, 5 questions only with full feedback. And then we'll have time for questions and answers. So do keep those for that period of time where we can delve into your questions exactly to see what we can help you with your quizzes. So last time we were working on a particular quiz. I've renamed and changed the dates for the quiz, so it's open today for us. We did a quiz last time with a whole bunch of different questions. So this is the quiz that we were working on. All I changed were the dates. Everything else except, and I've added a few questions. So this is the quiz that we were working on. Actually, let's go to quizzes. So when we're creating and editing quizzes, the easiest place to find them is by clicking quizzes on the left-hand side. And here you will see all the quizzes. So surveys are always going to have their own category, whether they're graded or not graded. In the quizzes section, they have their own category, so you can find your surveys quickly. All the practice quizzes, meaning quizzes that do not have a grade associated with them, will have their own section as well. And then assignment quizzes are basically graded quizzes. And we were creating a graded quiz, Quiz Bootcamp, quiz number 1. So when I click on the name of the quiz, it takes me to a summary page of the quiz, of course, where it shows me all my settings, as well as the dates, and where I can preview the quiz. But what we're going to do is we're going to edit this quiz. We do that from the top right corner. This is a quiz I had published before, but I'm going to unpublish it and edit it. There was nobody that took this quiz before. So when I click edit, of course, it gives me, just like we covered last time, that we have 2 tabs, a details tab and a questions tab. The details tab, as you see, covers all those options we spoke of last Monday, the ability to shuffle answers, which randomizes the order of the answers, the time limit, whether we allow multiple attempts, when the students can see their quiz responses. So in here, for example, they'll be able to see them for a week. And then of course the dates of the quiz. And then we're going to click questions, because today we're going to play around with question groups. So when we're looking here, these are all the questions I had created last time: multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, all of those question types that we created last time. And then I created a few other questions as well. And at the bottom of all my questions, I have plus new question, which is the button we used last Monday to create brand new questions. Then to the right of it, we have plus new question group. This is how we start creating a question group. So you might ask yourself, why would we create a question group? What is the point of this? A question group can have a couple of different, very different uses. One use that we're going to showcase first is going to be, we can use question groups to randomize the order of the questions themselves. Another use is to grab a few questions out of a batch of questions to present different questions to different students. So for example, you have a batch of 10 questions that are about the same topic, and they're kind of equivalent, but you want the students to have one of these questions. So then you create a question group and you tell the system, please pick one of these 10 questions. And then every time a student starts the quiz, it will randomly pick one of the 10 questions. So that means that if that's the only difference between the quizzes, you could have 10 different versions of the quiz, because each time a student starts the quiz, it could be any one of 10 different questions that is being picked. You can also use it, for example, to bring in a question bank, what they call a question bank, provided, for example, by a publisher, and you can tell the system, pick 5 questions out of this question bank about algebra, for example. So the point of question groups is to have a batch of questions that the system randomly picks from, and you tell the system exactly how many questions to pick out of the bucket. Because every time a student starts the quiz, the system randomly picks out of the bucket, we will use this feature to trick the system into randomizing our questions. So we have all these questions we created last time, all worth 2 points. I can make the system randomize these questions by putting them all into one question group and then telling the system to pick as many questions out of the group as we have created. So how many questions do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 questions worth 2 points. Keep in mind, I can't include essay and file because these are not worth 2 points, they are worth 10 points. So all the questions I'm randomizing have to be worth the same amount of points. So again, we have 9 questions here. So the first use case we're going to use is to use this feature to randomize our questions. So we're going to get started by clicking plus new question group at the bottom after all of our questions. Once we do that, we will get this little interface that asks for a name for the group. So I'm going to call this randomize 2 points. So I remember these are my 2-point questions. I'm going to tell it to pick 9 questions at 2 points per question. This is why I said that all the questions have to be worth the same amount of points, because once I drag these questions into the group, whatever they were worth out of will be ignored in preference for the setting for the group. So once I gave it a name, I told it how many questions to pick, how much each question is worth. I click create group to create this empty group. Now we're going to move this at the very top. So I'm going to click this row of dots on the left and just grab it and drag it all the way to the top. So it's easier for me to move my questions in here. Not to mention, I would like these questions to appear before the essay question and file upload type. So now I just grab all the questions I want to be in this group by clicking and holding down the left mouse button on these 2 rows of dots. And I just drag it and drop it in this bucket right here. I've got 3 so far. 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So I got all my 9 questions in this bucket right here. And I still have the essay and the file question and my other 3 questions right after. If I look at the top, multiple choice is the first question and true false is the second question. I have to move the questions in the bucket so the system knows which questions to pick from. If this group was left empty, then obviously it wouldn't have anything to pick from. Also, I moved it at the very top to make it easier for me to drag all these questions in it, and because I want those questions to appear before the essay question. How I put them inside this bucket does not matter because, as we said, every time we start the quiz, it will randomize which questions. I'm making a note of the fact that multiple choice and true false are the first ones because I'm going to show you this in action, and I want you to note whether or not these will be the first two questions when we preview this quiz. Okay, so I'm going to save this quiz now. And we are going to click preview. Again, I don't know why, but there's two preview buttons. One is always down here at the bottom in black, and there's always one at the top next to the edit button. So when we click preview, it will pretend that we're a student, and you can see the first question is most certainly not a multiple choice question. It's actually our fill in the blank question. And the second question is our numerical answer question, which was way further down in my list of questions. So you can see that the questions are now in randomized order. We can scroll on down, and actually our multiple choice is our 7th question, even though in our group, it is the first question. So you can see how it now is randomizing the questions. And this is obscured from the students because, as we said, they just see question and then a number based on the order that Canvas is choosing to show them the questions. So for all intents and purposes, we have randomized the list. The more questions you have, the more obvious this becomes that it's different questions. If you have only a couple of questions, that obviously is not going to be as obvious, but we have, for example, 9 questions. So we're going to get quite a diverse order of questions every time we preview this. Now, the other thing, we're going to click edit again. And as I said, the only caveat is when we're creating these groups, the questions all have to be worth the same amount of points. So for these at the top here, they're all worth 2 points. I can also, for example, put essay and file into another group so that I could randomize their order. Obviously, there's only 2 of them, so that seems not that productive. But if I had, for example, half of my quiz was worth 2 points and the other half was worth 5 points, I could make a group for all the 2-point questions and a group for all the 5-point questions, and then the quiz would be quite randomized in that case. So this is the first use of this question group that we're showcasing, which is to just randomize the questions we have in the quiz, which is a feature a lot of people want, because it really helps between shuffling the answers and randomizing the questions and restricting the quiz to however long the students actually need to complete it, really can help combat their ability to work together, because they have a lot less time to think about it. They can't just share, oh, question 1, the second answer was the right answer, because 1, you've shuffled the answers, so the order of the options may be completely different between two students in the class. Second of all, they may be looking at completely different questions when looking at them. So the other use case that we're going to showcase is one that is more in line with the purpose of why these question groups were created. So the point of them originally is for you to be able to create almost like different versions of your quiz by having equivalent questions in a group and then having Canvas pick only some of those questions, so that you're basically creating different versions of the quiz by having different students see different questions all together. So I created 3 very simple limit questions. They are very similar in terms of complexity, is a similar formula for them to calculate, is the same concept of how they calculate this limit. And I created these 3 questions that I'm calling them equivalent 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to create a question group and tell Canvas to pick only one of them. So you can see we have limit x going to 2, x going to 3, and x going to 4. This is the easiest way for us to keep a distinction between them, because what comes after that may or may not be the same. So we're going to create a new question group by clicking plus new question group down here. And again, we're going to name this. And I'm going to tell it to pick one question. These were all worth 1 point, so I'm going to leave it at 1 point per question. I'm going to click create group. And I'm just going to drag these questions into this group. Again, it doesn't matter what order I'm putting them in because the system will be picking from them each time. Okay, so there's 3 questions in here, and we told it to pick one question. So let's save and see what that has done to our quiz. So again, when we hit preview, we will again see that now true false is the first question. So you can see this question, the matching question was question number 3 last time we previewed this, and what used to be our first question is now question 8. So you can see how different the orders can be of these questions. We have our essay question, our file upload, and here we have only one question now. It has picked the second option where x is going to 3. And it's just presenting one question. Now I'm going to go back to my quiz and I'm going to preview again, and let's see if we get a different question. Again, the more questions you have, the more variations it can create. So now when we're looking at the bottom, it is actually the same one. Let's see. Okay, let's go to the quiz and preview again. This time we got the limit of x going to 4. Okay, so let's go to edit. So what I did, I first created my questions, and then I created my question groups. Do note that within these question groups, I always have a plus sign at the top where the name, so this is the name of the group, equivalent questions. It says pick one question, 1 point per question. I have the plus sign over here to add any questions I want. So if I want to add any new questions to start from scratch, I can do that. I personally like to create my questions first and then the question groups, but you can create the question groups and then create the questions within them just by pressing the plus sign to the right of the question group name. So right here, the plus is how you can start adding a new question. You click update question and that's it. Also, if you were unsatisfied and you add some extra questions, you can always click that plus. So that is how you can use question groups either to randomize the order or to genuinely create different versions of your quiz by having the system pick from a batch of questions and only showing a few of the questions. It doesn't have to be one, it can be more. You can choose 2 out of 3 or 2 out of 20 questions, whatever works for your needs. The other thing I want to showcase is what they call question banks. So when we're creating quizzes and we're creating questions from scratch, the system puts all these questions in a bucket called question banks. And we can always access these questions. So for example, this Quiz Bootcamp is a separate quiz from quizzes I already have in this particular course. So I had, in this course, as I showed last time, I had about, let me open this up again. I had 2 surveys and 2 other quizzes, right? So I have these 2 surveys here and 2 other quizzes. When I go to edit this particular quiz, At the bottom, I can click Find Questions, and that will look through any questions inside. So when I click Find Questions, you will see that it opens up unfiled questions for this particular course. So the name of the course is below, and it's telling me there's 14 questions. So when I look here, there's all these questions that were in this particular quiz, but I can also see View Course Question Banks. And if I had more question banks, it will show those all to me right here. And then I could see them all and I can rename them. So this will come in handy because we will cover how to bring in past questions and past quizzes for your particular course. So let's say that you have started a quiz and you decided to combine two quizzes and you wanted to bring in those questions. You would use Find Questions in order to add those questions. Also, if you imported question banks, as I will be showing you, you can use Find Questions to actually find those questions that you brought in. So let's go in to save this. Let's go into importing some quizzes. So the first thing I'm going to cover is that importing always starts from the settings page of your current newer course. So the course you want to bring everything into, that's where you start from, and you go into settings. And here in the settings, you have import course content. That is how it's on the right-hand side right here. This is how you bring in your course content from past courses. And when we click import course content, it will show us everything we've imported in the past. You can see I imported some things in the past. And this is where we get started. So we went to settings, import content, course content. And here to get started, from where it says content type, and it says select one, we're going to say copy a Canvas course. Now, normally you as an instructor and not admin like me, you would get a drop-down list of your courses first, and then as an option, this box that you see here. But I only have the box because I'm an admin, so it doesn't know which of my courses to show me. So I need to put in my course name. So I'm going to put in and it will start searching. Okay, so there is the name. And I'm going to select specific content because I only want to bring in a particular quiz. So when I click select specific content, oops, I didn't want to select that. So I click select specific content and then I click import. And now the system waits for me right here to tell it what I'm bringing over. So here where it says current jobs, it says course copy. This is the course I picked right here when I started this. And then it says waiting for selection. So when I'm only importing a specific quiz or question banks, this is what it's showing me. So I'm going to select content. So this is what you would do if you want to bring in a full quiz to another one of your courses. So this is very helpful. Let's say you're teaching two different sections. You might want to just copy over the quizzes from the other section so that you only have to create them in one and then just do a couple of adjustments after you import it for the second section. Or another example might be a past course, you created a really good quiz that you just want to add a couple of questions or remove a couple of questions, but otherwise leave a lot of the questions similar. You might want to bring in the full quiz and just do some adjustments like adding new questions. So here, when I click on the arrow to the left of quizzes, right here, I have 4 quizzes in that particular course. when I click the arrow, it shows me the names of the quizzes and surveys I've created. So I'm going to bring over quiz 2 from here. And I'm going to click select content. So I'm just clicking to the left of quiz 2. So there's a white check mark on blue. And then I click select content on the bottom right. So this quiz 2 is a quiz that I've completed. I'm satisfied with. It's all looking good. So I brought in that quiz. You can see here it says completed for this particular line. So I'm going to go to quizzes. And notice now that I have quiz 2 right here under assignment quizzes. This quiz was published when I brought it in, so it came in as in published state. When I click on it, I can see the quiz with all the questions, all the options, all the dates, so I can make all my edits. So I can unpublish this course to work on it some more, and then click edit. And now I can see all the settings that I had set up. So for example, if I'm bringing an older quiz from last semester, I bring it in and then I just adjust these dates over here. And then I go to the questions and maybe I want to add or remove some questions. I do that right here. And now I have a brand new version of quiz 2. And then save. And that's it. Okay. So that's one method. This is if for the most part, you're going to keep the quiz very similar to the form it's already in. And then what if you want just to bring some of the questions? You would like to reuse some of the questions you created, for example, from last spring's course. You want to bring some questions that were really good and worked really well for you, but you don't want the entire quiz. It's only like 3 or 4 questions that you want to bring in from your other past quiz. How do you do that? You can do that by, again, going to settings in your newer course, and then on the right-hand side, clicking import course content. Right here, when we click that, again, we're going to, under content type, choose copy a Canvas course. We're going to choose the course by providing the name, or for you, choosing from a drop-down list. And then we're going to, again, select specific content, click import. And when we click select content this time, instead of choosing one of the quizzes, we're going to click the arrow where it says question banks. I'm going to choose unfilled filed questions. Oh, please make sure you are muted. Sorry, 1 second. So we're going to click to the left of unfiled questions. And now all the questions from that course are now selected, and we're going to click select content. And it's going to run. And I'm going to show you where that appears in 2 different places in your course. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to quizzes now. And on the right-hand side, right next to plus quiz, are 3 vertical dots. And when we click that, we have manage question banks. When I click that, it will show me the question banks that I have. I know this is the one I just imported because it has today's date and the time from a minute ago. So I know this is the one I just brought in. So I'm going to edit this and rename it so I can easily recognize it. I'm going to call this grading workshop questions. So I know these are the questions I brought from that place. And while I'm at it, I could rename the one for this course. So Quiz Bootcamp questions. So all I did was click the little pencil to the right of the unfiled questions name and then type in. So now I have 2 question banks. This is the one from the course, the Quiz Bootcamp question is from this particular course, and grading workshop questions is from the other course. All right, so this is where I can see them. That's lovely, but how do I bring them into my quiz? So when I go to quizzes, I'm going to go edit my quiz number 1 again. So I'm going to click the name, click edit on the top right. So I have 2 ways of using this. One way is when I go at the bottom of all the questions I already have, remember we had find questions. When I click that, now you can see that I have 2 question banks. I have the grading workshop one and the quiz bootcamp one. When I click on the grading workshop one, I have all the 9 questions it had brought over, and I can choose several of them to just add to my current quiz that I'm editing. So I can choose as many as I want and add them in. So we're going to choose one of them, the number 1, and I'm going to click add questions. And now you can see the question is right here. So this is how I can add in several questions. Another thing I can do is I can add a question group and link it to this bank and make the system just pick 2 out of the 9 questions that I brought in. So this is how I can combine these question banks that are brought over with the question groups. So I'm going to create a new question group, and we're just going to call it bank. And I'm going to tell it to pick 2 questions worth 3 points each. And you see at the bottom below the name, it says link to a question bank. When I click that, I can choose one of these banks. I'm going to choose the grading workshop one, the one I brought in. I'm going to click select bank. It will not show me the questions here. It'll just tell me that it's linking to this bank. I'm picking 2 questions out of that entire bank. So let's save this and preview so we can see these questions in actions. So the beginning are all the questions I already had, the essay, the file upload, then the equivalent questions. And then you can see here, oops, sorry. Oh, 1 second. Sorry, I forgot to.
Create group. You forgot to click on create group.
Yeah, 1 second. 2 questions, 3 points. I was too excited to show off the text over here that I forgot to press the button. Here we go. Now we can see it in action. All right. This is why preview is so important. You can tell if you missed a step or not. Okay, so we're going at the bottom. We have up here the limit question. This is the question number 1 that I had added in. And then we have 2 questions here randomly picked from that batch of 9 questions. Yes, they all have to do with World War II. So that is how you can use the question banks as well, is you can have the system just link to them, or you can add the questions from the question bank by just clicking find a question. So to be clear, a question bank is a collection of questions you've created in the course or that you've brought from a different course. A question group is a bucket of questions that the system will pick from. So question banks are basically just a list of your questions, nothing more. Question groups are a way for the system to pick questions for you from a list of questions. And you have an option of either listing the questions like here, or reusing one of your older questions and putting them in a question group and letting the system pick randomly questions from that group. So question groups are a system that you can have where it randomly picks from a whole bunch of questions, while question banks are literally just lists of questions. And we went over importing a full quiz. That is a great use case is if you're mostly using that quiz intact with only a couple of adjustments, like the dates or adding or removing a couple questions. And question banks is where you just want some of the questions that you've used in the past. You don't actually plan on making a similar quiz to one of your past quizzes. The other thing that we can do is we can import quizzes from like a publisher, let's say. So I have created a file just for the purposes of showing you. So when I click import course content over here in the settings page again, instead of copy a Canvas course, I can choose Canvas course export package. There's some other more different QTI zip file. I can choose that as well. And what we're going to use today is QTI zip file because that is what a lot of publishers may give you in order for you to use their quizzes, for example, or question banks. We can also receive a Canvas course export package. We can receive that as well. So I'm going to find my file right here. So I chose QTI zip file. That's usually what they give you. But as I said, they could also give you a Canvas course export package. I chose the file by clicking choose file. And then it asks me, where do I want to put the questions? So I'm going to tell it to create a new question bank and call it import file. And then I'm going to hit import. It's running now. Of course, some publishers may offer materials differently or not at all. So what I imported right here, we can check that out. We're going to go to quizzes. And we can see right here, this is the survey I just imported. This is what I had imported. And it also added these questions to a new question bank called survey. And this is the only question I had in that survey. So this is, I'm showing you just in case that a publisher provides you files of quizzes or anything like that. That is how you can bring them in. So I brought in a survey, basically. Okay. So just a couple of things to repeat. When we are editing the quiz, if we brought in some questions by importing the question bank, we can either click find questions in order to add several questions from that question bank, or we can create a group that links to that question bank and picks from those questions that we brought over. When you click find questions, it will show you all your question banks, all the questions, and it will basically give you the label and the question prompt. So you can more easily tell what is this question I'm bringing over. It gives you a little preview. But you can always create brand new questions by clicking plus new question. Okay, let's see if we okay, so just to recap, I did do several different things. So the first time I imported a full quiz. Then I imported just the question bank from a course. And then I imported a file that I pretended came from a publisher so that you can see how that works. So you have different options. When I imported that file, it brought the survey that I was importing into my course. But again, you have options. You can bring in a full quiz, or you can bring in the question banks, which just gives you access to those questions from the previous course. Unfortunately, I don't have an actual question bank from a publisher. Sorry, Lisa. Okay, let's take about 10-minute break. If you have some questions, I can answer some questions, or you guys can actually take a break. So some publishers will offer you just questions. So then you'll be importing a question bank. Some publishers offer you a quiz that has all the questions in there. Other publishers offer an entire package that has basically something like, for example, a quiz for each chapter. So you cannot put a question group inside another question group. So inside a question group, you can either put questions or you can link it to a question bank. You cannot put. Okay, so depending on what they offer. If they're offering an actual quizzes, they will be brought into your quizzes section as quizzes, just like my survey did. If they are offering you just question banks, then they won't appear in quizzes section. When you click the 3 vertical dots over here on the right-hand side and click Manage Question Banks, you'll see the question bank in here. So depending on what they offer, they'll appear differently. If it is actual quizzes, they will appear in the quizzes section. Most publisher ones appear unpublished, but some of them appear published. And the ones that offer only question banks, it will appear just here in the question banks. You will not see an actual survey or quiz in your quizzes section. Do keep in mind that if they offer actual quizzes, their name convention will be whatever their name convention is, so you may have to edit. But they'll appear, if it is actual quizzes, they'll just appear right here in this section. So quiz 2 is the one that I manually imported from a different course than mine. If they offer actual quizzes, when you import the package, it will just be a whole bunch of quizzes, just like quiz 2. And if they support Canvas, then of course their questions will be exactly the type that they've used when they've set it up. So if they created a quiz with some multiple choice, some true, false, etc., then it will appear that way if they offer this way. Not all publishers offer something that you can import into Canvas like this. Other publishers go a different route altogether. But yeah, all their questions are set up already. So if they're offering you a package of quizzes, the questions will be, for example, multiple choice with the correct answer labeled and things like that. They are less likely to use Canvas specific types. So if, for example, their original stuff was created in Blackboard and they don't have certain question types, then they'll stick to the more traditional ones, like multiple choice, true, false, things like fill in the blank, that kind of stuff. Again, if you're working with a publisher and having some struggles, you can always contact FTC and we can help you depending on what exactly we're going on. But usually publishers have a representative that works with you and they have a lot of experience with their tools that are very specific to their tools. And they often know a lot more about how their tools work than we ever could possibly know because they're the expert in their tool. When you create new questions, you start by creating your quiz and start creating questions inside the quiz. Settings is if you want to bring in either quizzes you've created in the past, questions you've created in the past, in other Canvas courses, or quizzes or questions from a publisher. So settings is for bringing in stuff from outside the current course. If you are starting by creating questions, you're not bringing anything from your past courses or other courses or anything like that, you would start how we did last week on Monday by creating a quiz, then going to questions and clicking new question. So again, if you're not reusing anything, you'll create a new quiz, set up all the settings, and then you go to questions tab, and at the very bottom you click plus new question, just like last time. That's why we started with that. You are very welcome. So let's publish this quiz for a second, as I want to show you guys. There is not, we're not going to cover this, but just so you know that there is a software called Respondus that you can download from the download page on CSUN that can import Word documents if they are formatted a very specific way that Respondus requires. They have a formatting guide, and if you format them the way the guide covers, you can bring them into Respondus and then make Respondus provide you a QTI file. That's the kind of file that I was importing today. And then you can bring that into Canvas. But again, they have very strict formatting guidelines in order to bring in any Word document in questions into their system. And if you follow those guidelines, then yes, you can bring it in. I will tell you that sometimes some people spend a lot more time trying to modify their Word document to fit the formatting guidelines and learn Respondus than they would have spent just trying to create the questions from scratch in Canvas. So do keep that in mind. We don't cover that, as that's a different use case, but there is that alternative for you, just so you know. Okay, let's now cover the moderate this quiz tool. So let's say we have created a quiz, we have created our questions in there, the students are ready to take the quiz. What information do we have available during the quiz? Also, how can we deal with special cases? How do we deal with a student who, for example, lost internet midway through the quiz and did not get it back for a couple hours? How do we deal with a student who has needs to get more time? What happens if we have a student who was sick, for example, and we want to allow them to take the quiz at a different date and time later than everyone else? How can we provide all these different accommodations, or how can we cover all these situations? But first, what we're going to cover is I'm going to go take this quiz as one of my students. So I'm going to go into another browser. And I'm going to refresh this. And this is what the whole experience looks like from the point of view of a student. So it tells the students how many questions there are, when it is due, how many points this is worth, how long they have, the time limit, any instructions you gave them, and then they get a take the quiz button. When you click that button, then they see all the questions. Of course, if you set it up to show one question at a time, that's what they would see. And you can see that this person the student started well after the 10 a.m. start time. So it warned the student that they won't get the full 2 hours. And it shows them right here that they have 1 hour, 1 minute, and 23 seconds. So as we're going through, we can answer the questions. Some of them I'm going to answer correctly, some of them not. Just 1 second. And let's put in an essay here. Luckily, the system knows if I answer correctly or not, unlike me. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna submit the quiz. And we can see all the information right here. This is all the feedback I'm providing the students. But if I go to the view from this faculty member's point of view and I click moderate the quiz on the right-hand side, right here, moderate this quiz on the right-hand side. When I click this, I can see that one of my students already used up an attempt, how long they took to finish, and what their score was right here. And we can see right there all the information. If I go to another student, let me open up one more browser. You can see that this information is even presented live as I'm taking the quiz. So when I click this quiz as another student, I'm going to click take the quiz, and I'm going to answer one of the questions. Okay. And then we're going to refresh this page, but it's already showing me live. And you can see while the student is taking, moderate this quiz page is showing me that they're on their first attempt. This is how much time they have left, how many attempts they have left, and it's showing me that they're in there. And this is how I was able to see, for example, the other day when you guys were taking the quizzes. Oh, let me see. Well, this is too low. Okay. When you were taking the quizzes, I could see how many people were already finished, how many people were still working through it, and all that information, I could see it. And you could see here that there's still time going. So I can see how many students are in. I can start seeing when they're starting to wrap up, the majority of the students, who is left behind, still working on it, etc. I can see all that information in moderate this quiz page live as the students are taking the quiz. And as they're finishing, I can see their scores as well. Okay, so let's go back. And we'll leave that going. Okay, so what else can I do on this moderate this quiz? So again, moderate this quiz is from the quiz web page. On the right-hand side, moderate this quiz. So what else can I do? So when I click moderate this quiz, it does show me all the information we talked about, the student's name, how many attempts they used up, the score, all that information. However, the other thing I can do is, let's say John's student started the test and within minutes lost internet for the rest of the day, for example. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I want to give the student the opportunity to take this test again. How do I do that? Well, first off, from this page, I have a little pencil to the right of each student. So when, in this case, John's student already took this, I can click this pencil and I can give him extra attempts. This is valid even if you already give students 2-3 attempts and for some reason you need someone to get even more attempts. So this is all extra on top of what everyone gets. In our case, everyone gets only 1 attempt and this student already used that up. So I can give them 1 extra attempt and I can unlock the quiz for them because they've already taken it. If I was doing this ahead of time, for example, there was a student whose accommodation request included them being able to have more than 1 attempt at a quiz, then I can do this ahead of time and allow them to have 2 attempts right off the bat before they even start. In that case, I don't need to unlock the quiz. It's not locked for them because I'm doing this before they've even started. But in this case, John's student already started, so I can give him 1 extra attempt and unlock the quiz for him. And now, when we go back to our student, and he goes to the quiz, it is right here, and it says take the quiz again. So they have this button available for them and they can see what grade they got on their previous attempt and they can take it again. Again, if I was providing no feedback until later on, then this would be even better. But right now I'm providing them the full feedback so they can see what's correct or incorrect. But if I was delaying the feedback until later, then they wouldn't have been able to see anything. But you can see now they're able to take the quiz again. It would be a good idea to notify the student. And obviously, most of the time, you'll be doing this kind of intervention after the fact because the student contacted you with the information, saying what happened and all that stuff. So they'll be able to see if they go into the course, they'll be able to see it again, but it's just best to let them know because it's not like they will get an email. So if I was providing absolutely no feedback on the quiz, if I had, let me edit this so I can show you where it is. So this section over here, where I'm letting students see the correct answers, if I had unchecked all of this stuff, then the students wouldn't see any feedback right away or ever. So then taking it at a later date, they would have no idea about what was correct or incorrect in their answers. So that might be a reason to keep that hidden, and you can always modify that after the fact. So therefore, enabling them to see feedback later. So what other cases do we have? Let's say we have a case where someone is meant to get more time. So in our case here, we have this open from 10 a.m. till 12 p.m. with a 2-hour time limit. That means that if I want someone to have 3 hours, for example, even if I give them 3 hours, that will not be possible for them. So let's start with the first step of giving them extra time. Again, from moderate this quiz, I'm going to go and let me submit this. So I'm going to give test student extra time right here. The student has not taken the quiz yet. I'm going to click the little pencil. And where we had extra attempts, we also have extra time on every attempt. So we're gonna give an extra 60 minutes, okay, and click save. So theoretically, test student gets 3 hours. However, even if test student started at exactly 10 a.m., they would only get 2 hours because 2 hours later, the quiz closes. So if I want test student to be able to take this fully for 3 hours, then I need to modify the dates for them. So how do I do that? When I edit a quiz, okay, and of course, it always warns me about the fact that the students have already started taking this, but I can modify these dates without any problem. So again, all the other students, I want them to take it from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And I want just test student to have from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. So I'm going to click plus add. And actually, test student doesn't appear here. So let's give, let me see. Just 1 second, I'll pick a different student. So let's give John an extra 60 minutes. Okay. So here we're gonna click plus add, and we're gonna choose the student that we need to allow to take until 1 p.m. So I'm gonna click John student. Notice up here where it said everyone, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. now says everyone else. So John student will get from 10 to 1 p.m. once I finish, but everyone else is still at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. I never want to edit this because then the quiz will no longer be assigned to everyone else. I gotta make sure that everyone else in the class still is assigned the original dates and time. So we're gonna make this due at 1 p.m. and available until 1 p.m. and available from 10 a.m. So now from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., John's student has a total of 3 hours. So I gave the student an extra 60 minutes, and then I made sure that it is open for them for the full 3 hours. Okay, right here. So on the summary page, it will show me all these different dates and time that I've set up. So one student has from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And when I click moderate this quiz, I also can see John's student gets 60 extra minutes. However, let's say that we need a student to take a quiz at a completely different date and time. This happens a lot of the time, especially with accommodations, but it could also be something else. Maybe there is extenuating circumstances, a student got sick, they'd let you know ahead of time that they won't be able to take the quiz because they are sick, and you want to allow them to take it at a different time. You can do this ahead of time. So we're gonna take the student over here, my other student here. I'm gonna give them another attempt. And when you do this ahead of time, the student will not be able to take it during the regular time. If you're giving them extra time and your quiz is open only for as long as the time limit is, then you need to give them extra time. But for example, if this quiz of mine was open for 24 hours and this student needed to be given 3 hours instead of 2 hours, then I wouldn't have to worry about this because they would be able to have 3 hours as long as they started early enough in those 24 hours. The reason I had to extend the end time for the student is because my quiz is open for exactly the same amount of time as the time limit. So my quiz is open for 2 hours and it has a time limit of 2 hours. But again, if your quiz is more flexible, where it's open for longer than the time limit, then you might not need to do that. But I'm mimicking more of a midterm or final exam type of situation where you guys might want to be more restrictive at the time frame that they're allowed to take the quiz. So, and that is a more challenging case where you have to give them an extra time and then change the available and due dates. I'll answer the next question, Lisa, in 1 minute, okay? Let me just cover the case of where I'm allowing a student to take the quiz at a completely different time. So if I know ahead of time that this student needs to take the quiz at a different time altogether, I can set this up ahead of time. So as I said, this occurs sometimes when the student requires accommodations that involve them taking a quiz at DRES, for example, or anything like that, then they may need to actually be given a completely different date and time than other students. Or as I said, if you know ahead of time the student is sick and will not be able to take the quiz, you can set this up so that they can take it, let's say, a couple of days later or something like that. So I'm going to click again, plus add is how we add any exceptions. I'm going to click plus add. I'm going to choose my other student. And I'm going to now make it due. Let's say we're going to make the student is going to take it on the 22nd from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So we're going to make it 10 a.m. Start time available from, oh, sorry, this is the due date. Due date, 12 p.m. So we're going to make it available from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. Due date and time exactly the same. So no late. So this student now can only take it on July 22nd. So if I set this up ahead of time, this student will not be able to take it at the same time with the other students. They'll only be able to take it at this dated time that I set up. So in this case, for Wednesday. Now there was a question about the pros and cons of allowing a wide window. So depending on your concerns and the kind of questions you have, it might be better or worse for you to use a bigger window. The reason you would use a tight window is if you are concerned about them working together, if you do not want to be an open book kind of exam, then giving them a tighter window where they just have enough time to complete the quiz and they all are working at the same time, then that can limit how much they can collaborate or access their books or anything like that. If the quiz is more, you know, kind of an open book quiz, or the quiz is more like a practice so that they can prep better and recap the information they've learned, then maybe you want it to be more open so they have more flexibility and time to work on it. But again, it increases the chance that they might be working together because the students have seen the questions. So there might be a student who saw the question at 8 a.m., they took the quiz, they can let other students know what questions there were there. Again, if you're not providing any feedback, letting them know which questions they got wrong or anything right away, then of course that can be less impactful. If the questions are open book kind of questions that involve them working through and reasoning out a whole bunch of concepts and scenarios, then making it more open-ended doesn't retract that much. But again, when it comes to anything where you're concerned that they may work together, then it's better to have it a tighter timeline where they're all working together at the same time. So that's kind of the thought process on why you would use such tight time frames and why you wouldn't. So it depends on your content and your goals with the particular quiz. Surveys, obviously, there's no point to be this tight with the survey, you know, because you're just trying to collect information from them. So giving them as many opportunities as you can is best, obviously, for surveys. Okay. 1 second. Okay, so we have created this quiz, but we have other quizzes in this particular sample course. And this particular question, so to be clear, once a student opens the quiz, they cannot pause the timer. Okay, the timer kicks in and keeps going. So for example, if I have the quiz is open 24 hours, but I have a time limit of 2 hours. As soon as I click take the quiz, the timer for 2 hours starts. So if I close the browser, Canvas doesn't care, the timer ticks on. We've had students who did not seem to comprehend that concept and opened the quiz, saw the questions, closed the quiz, returned the next day, and were baffled that they had a 0. What happened was the timer, the 2-hour timer, kept going in the background, even though the browser was closed, because they had seen the questions. So as soon as they see the questions, this timer starts and it keeps going. So that is why it's also a good idea to make the time limit very similar to what you would expect the average student to take to complete the quiz. Because that way they have to work on those questions without stopping and going and doing other things. That timer kicks on. The difference with 24 hours is that, as I said, one student could start the quiz at 8 a.m., work until 10 a.m. on it, be done. Another student might be more convenient for them. They'll start at 1 p.m. and get until 3 p.m. to work on it, that kind of idea. And the other question from Beth is that if the quiz is available for longer than the time limit, so 2.5 hours, as soon as they click, they get 2 hours, regardless if they started the minute it's open, they'll get cut off at 2 hours. But let's say they started an hour in, they'll get cut off after an hour and a half. Because whatever comes first, whether the time limit has ended or the end time has been reached, whichever one comes first, that's when they get cut off. So if the quiz closes at 12, then they're done at 12, even if they theoretically could still have time based on the time limit alone. So if someone had the quiz is open for 2.5 hours, they start exactly on time, they get cut off after 2 hours. They start an hour in, they get cut off when the quiz ends. So they only get an hour and a half because they started an hour late into a 2.5 hour window. Within the time limit, they can take their time. But again, like, let's say if your average student would complete my quiz in 1 hour and I give them a time limit of 2 hours, then of course they can take their time, do whatever. However, if most of my students would take my quiz in 1 hour and I give them an hour and 15 minutes tops, then most of them cannot afford to not be focusing on the quiz. So, and do keep in mind, if you use 1 question per page and lock the questions away, they also have to time themselves and really manage their time, because they will not be able to go back. They'll have to answer the question and keep moving, because they will not be able to come back or anything like that. And they also don't see the questions all at once, so they can't know if there's a more difficult question coming later that might take them more time. So that's also something to keep in mind. All right. Okay, so we were talking a lot about, right now I was at least talking about how having a broader window can allow the students to cooperate and work together and stuff like that. We have something called Lockdown Browser. What it does, it locks the students into a specific browser called Lockdown Browser, where they can't alt-tab to any other software, another browser window, open other websites or anything like that. Do keep that in mind that Lockdown Browser by itself does not monitor the students through any video camera or audio or anything like that. So keep in mind that Lockdown Browser does not prevent students from using their phones to collaborate with anyone else or anything like that, but does prevent them from being able to open some of the websites, some of the resources on the computer that they are on. So we're going to show you first how to turn this on for a particular quiz. Then I'm going to show you a little video that goes over what the student experiences, because unfortunately, if I start Lockdown Browser, then it will close Zoom, because Zoom is another software that is over the internet, and Lockdown Browser would not allow me to run that while I'm taking a quiz. So again, we're first going to show you how to turn it on, what options exist for it. Then we're going to show you a video so you can see exactly what it looks like from the student's point of view. So first thing first, in order to turn this on, you first create your quiz. So that's the first step. So whether it's a final exam or midterm, you first create the quiz. You have all the questions set up, the times set up for the quiz, everything ready. Then once that is done, so we're going to take as an example quiz 1 in this particular, actually let's take quiz 2. Let's publish quiz 2. We're going to take as the example for this. And we're going to go on the left-hand side. Every course has Lockdown Browser. And this is when you click this, first you might see a help window where they have great resources right here. So you can choose never to see this page again. I like to see it because it's a great quick access to any resources I may need or tutorials. So that's the first page. And then I click continue to Lockdown Browser, and it will show you a list of all my quizzes. So you can see I have my final exam here, my quiz 1, 2, my bootcamp quiz, all these different quizzes is showing me everything I've created. And on the right-hand side, they have a column that says Lockdown Browser at the top, and then all of them say not required, because I haven't set up any quiz to require this. So we're gonna set up quiz 2 to require this. So when I click the arrow to the left of the name of the quiz, I get a little tiny menu that says settings. Okay, and then it says Lockdown Browser settings don't require responders Lockdown Browser for this exam. Of course, that's the default, but we want to require it. So then I click require responders Lockdown Browser for this exam. And then I can also choose to require Lockdown Browser to view the feedback and the results so that they can't, for example, take screenshots of the feedback and results, because again, that is one other thing that Lockdown Browser can prevent, is the taking of screenshots through the computer. Again, it does not prevent the student from taking out their camera or their phone and taking a photo of their, of their monitor. Do keep that in mind. But these are, once I turn it on, this is on by default. You can turn that off if you want to. Then you can choose to have a password where you have to give the student a password to get into the quiz. And if they don't have the password, they can't start the quiz. This is optional. It's up to you if you would like to have an access code. And then you can click the plus sign next to advanced settings for a few more options. So I'm going to go over these options. And the same password is used by all the students, yes. So for example, if you want them all to start at a certain point, you can withhold that password and give them to them, for example, in a Zoom session, and say, this is the password you need to enter when you start this exam, go. Again, it adds in another complication to the whole system, but that is option available for you. Now, advanced settings, we have a few things that we can go over. The first one is it locks the students into the browser until exam is completed. You do have the option to put in a password for them to return to the exam. So basically what happens if you have this on? What it means is that the students cannot close the exam until the browser until they've submitted the exam. You can set up a password to allow them to return. This can be a little bit tricky. For example, for in-person exams, this can be this has been tricky at times when, for example, the professor had an exam that had video and audio in the prompt of the questions, and for some reasons the students didn't connect their Bluetooth headphones ahead of time. Again, you do not have access to any of the things on your computer during it, so of course the students, once they started, couldn't set up their headphones with Bluetooth, so they had to exit the browser and come into it again. And again, if you don't set up a password here, you can't let your students go back to the course. So this can be a little bit problematic, but it basically means that the students can't exit the browser and come back to the exam. Or if they close the browser, the exam is done. They can't come back to it. So do keep in mind that this can, there may be legitimate reasons why the students need to close the browser during it, such as connecting things like their headphones. The second option is very important. If some of your students only have an iPad and they don't have a Windows or a Mac computer, then you might want to turn this option on to allow the students to take it on iPad. Again, the iPad app does a similar thing to the iPad that it does on the computer. It locks them away from being able to go and use their browser and access the internet and things like that. So that is an option again. Otherwise, the students need to have a Windows or Mac computer. Then another option is you can set up specific websites that they could go to. So you could allow them to go to specific websites if you want them to, if that is something appropriate for your quiz. Another couple of options is you can allow them to use the calculator. So for example, if in your quiz, the questions, you want them to be able to use a calculator. It has even, whether it's just a standard simple one or a full scientific calculator, you can enable that so they can use a calculator during it. Chromebooks are not supported. Just keep that in mind. Printing, again, I'm not sure why you would need to enable printing, but if you have a situation where you need your students to be able to print during the quiz, then you might want to enable this. Otherwise, calculator and printing are not available to the students during this. Same for this. If you do not allow them access to specific websites, the students will not be allowed to access any website outside of the Canvas website with the quiz. That's it. Okay, I see we're already getting some questions. Yeah, definitely this first option can be very problematic. If they lose internet connection, they can just refresh the webpage they're on. However, a lot of students' first instinct will be to just close the exam and reopen it, in which case if you're locking them out, then that will be problematic. Again, you can set up a password that you can give to them if they're in a certain circumstance where they need to come back. You can do that, or you could just leave this completely off. Yeah, I can see someone said that you can save as PDF. Sometimes they might need that, yes. So again, this first option can be quite problematic. If you're going to turn it on, I strongly suggest that you set up a password that you can provide to the student if they are in some exceptional case, or just leave this option altogether. If this option is not selected, the student can close the browser. They have to provide a reason why they're closing the browser, which you will be told as well. You'll be told that they close the browser for this reason. at which time and when they returned. So they have to provide you that information. So in class exams, we had the situation, as I explained, with the headset, and the student had to type in and say, my headset is not connected yet, I have to restart. And they went, connected their Bluetooth headphones, then they went back into lockdown browser. So again, you'll be able to see when they exited out. But the thing is that by default, they're not, they're allowed to completely exit the browser, and you'll be told when they exited and when they came back. Again, if the time frame is very strict, then them exiting the browser and coming back to it does waste their time. So we're going to leave all these options off for right now. I'm just going to click Save and Close right at the bottom, so you can see what it looks like now. So now you can see on the right-hand side, next to quiz 2, it says required. The name of it also says requires responders lockdown browser. When we're looking at our quizzes now, we will see that now quiz 2 has the name quiz 2 requires responders lockdown browser. If I go over here to one of my students and I click quizzes, I can see now that it says quiz 2 requires responders lockdown browser. When I click on that, it has all the information. It tells them it requires this. And if I click take the quiz, it tells me, no, you cannot take this quiz in a regular browser. You have to download and install lockdown browser. So lockdown browser is just like another browser. They have to download it, install it, and then run it. When they run it, they'll be able to choose, the version is provided here is a CSUN version, so they'll just be choosing Canvas. They'll be presented with username and password login, just like Portal, and then they'll be going into the exam. So let's see if we need to clarify anything else from the questions. And if you have a lot of students who are using Chromebooks, then it's best not to use Responders Lockdown Browser, especially if they don't also have an iPad or anything else. So yes, there are some requirements in terms of what kind of browser or operating system you need. Do keep in mind that as far as I know, last year, Canvas itself has updated their requirements for browser, and they kind of want pretty new browsers, or else a lot of features, if anything, does not work. So, and as far as I know, the requirements for lockdown browsers are actually less strict than the ones for Canvas itself. So keep that in mind. Yes, Stavros, you are correct. The best way to prevent students cheating is to make the questions such that it is quite a lot of effort to cheat. So making the questions, for example, a multiple answer where they're penalized for guessing, randomizing questions, randomizing answers, making the questions such that you need to process and think through the questions, limiting their time a little bit. Those are kind of more effective means than lockdown browser. Yes, lockdown browser is very effective in a lab, in-person lab environment than at home. At home, it can introduce a lot of extra hurdles for the students. Okay, and it is indeed a good idea to do a practice quiz so the students can know what to expect rather than just taking the lockdown browser. So since we are on that topic, I want to point to you to some resources we put in to the Day 2 module. We have a web page right there with some of the resources for students. We're going to be watching this video in a minute. And we have also provided a whole bunch of resources for you as well. Respondus has very nice resources for that. So let me stop sharing and start sharing again. 1 second. Okay, I just needed to make sure that I am able to share my audio with you. Okay. So this is the video. This video is going to show you exactly what the experience is on the student side in terms of using the lockdown browser. So let me open this YouTube.
Respondus Lockdown Browser is a custom browser for Windows or Mac computers that locks down the testing environment within Canvas.
All right, here we go. Let's make this full screen. Were you guys able to hear?
Yes.
Okay, so let's try this again. I'm gonna mute myself. And again, this video is also linked in the course, in the Quiz Bootcamp course for your viewing pleasure as well at any time. So let's see this in action.
Respondus Lockdown Browser is a custom browser for Windows or Mac computers that locks down the testing environment within Canvas courses. When students use Lockdown Browser, they are unable to print, capture screen content, go to other URLs, or access other applications. This prevents students from using instant messaging programs, search engines, or any other digital resource during a quiz. Upon startup, Lockdown Browser goes directly to the institution's login page for Canvas. Students then log in by entering their username and password. Lockdown Browser is similar to a standard web browser, but several features have been removed, such as the menu bar, the address field for entering URLs, the Start button in Windows, and the System tray. Only the back, forward, stop, and refresh buttons are retained. The right mouse button has also been disabled, along with keyboard operations such as function keys and task switching keystrokes. The source code for the web page can't be viewed either. Once logged into Canvas, the course is selected, then the quiz is located and selected. If the settings for the quiz require that Lockdown Browser be used, and if the student is using Lockdown Browser, then everything will appear as normal. However, if a student attempts to start the quiz using a browser other than Lockdown Browser, as is now being shown, the screen will display a message indicating that the quiz can only be taken with Lockdown Browser. Notice also that the Take the Quiz button does not appear, preventing students using a standard web browser from continuing. Once the quiz begins, students using Lockdown Browser are prevented from exiting the quiz until it is submitted for grading. Not only are students prevented from going to other websites or switching to other applications, they are also prevented from accessing other areas in Canvas while taking the quiz. Quiz questions can include images, videos, or PDF files just as with a standard browser. If a question contains a link to another URL, it will open a new secure window that won't allow navigation beyond that initial page. So, for example, if the content in the new browser window happens to include a link to a search engine, the student will be unable to access the search link from that new page. When ready, the student will submit the quiz for grading. It is now possible to exit the browser. All other applications that were running prior to the start of Lockdown Browser will be available at this time. Thanks for watching. To learn more about Lockdown Browser, please contact your respondent.
All right. Is everyone able to see the regular screen just fine? It's no longer blurry or anything?
Fine.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Okay, so that was just a little video so you guys can see what it looks like for the students on their side. And again, this video is available from you right here. We've also posted some resources for your students as well as for yourself if you want to use the lockdown browser. All right, so as per usual, we have a little recap quiz. It is linked from the day 2 module, but I will also provide the link in the chat so everyone can take this recap quiz. Again, it's meant just as a recap and to provide you feedback. Let me put this into the chat for everyone. So let's take about 10 minutes to do that and then see if we have any other questions. So it is the Canvas Recap Quiz Day 2. Thank you, Herbert, for providing that great resource as well. Faculty development has a lot of resources in terms of how to design quizzes and questions and things like that from a pedagogical point of view, and also to deal with any concerns over plagiarism and cheating and all that. I will provide one more link as well for you guys. Just need a second to find it.
I know everyone's taking that quiz, but one thing I do want to stress, and I'm sorry if you did mention this, Andrea, a lockdown browser is a tool to help you when you're delivering your quizzes. It is not a tool that will prevent cheating. As many people have shared, students will be doing whatever they need to do or whatever they think to do to game the system if they're those sorts of students. So someone mentioned earlier, creating questions that can't be Googled, creating questions where they're actually engaging critically with your questions to prevent that sort of just using a search bar. That's one way to really prevent cheating. However, this lockdown browser is a tool that will assist in minimizing the risk of cheating. It's not a bulletproof thing. Don't think, oh, I'm going to use lockdown browser and it'll prevent all cheating, because we can't say that we have something that will prevent all cheating. Because again, if somebody wants to cheat, they're going to try to do whatever they can to do to cheat.
Great question, Amy. Unfortunately, at this time, we can't say, with certainty, yes or no. We're working hard on that and make sure that everyone is approving of it and all that. But at this time, we can't promise anything. We are working on that, but no promises, sorry. I know everyone was disappointed earlier this year. Okay, let me see how people are doing with the little recap quiz. Hopefully everyone is able to access it just fine. Can see some people are in there. That's great. Let's give everyone another 5 minutes or so to make sure they can finish. Lockdown browser is an option available for you in any quiz. You will see lockdown browser link on the left hand side of your particular course. Let me see here. So here, I disabled it in the Quiz Bootcamp because we're not using that right now, but it is available in your courses. On the left hand side, you'll see lockdown browser. It might be lower down. If you can't see it, you can make sure to enable it from settings. And then navigation right here, this is where you decide what things students see on the left-hand side, and you can choose to disable it, of course. But if for some reason it's disabled in yours, you can always enable it by just clicking to the right of it and clicking enable, and then saving. So in the course that you're in, I turned that off because there's already far too many links over here on the left. I do like to give people a link directly to the quiz just to make sure we're all on the same page. That is not necessary. We just like to do that for our boot camps and trainings in general, just to make sure everyone's on the right page, on the right quiz, etc. Usually when students are in Zoom sessions or things like that, or in the classroom, they're not really provided a link. They're just told, go to this module, click on this particular quiz. So it's not necessary, but we just like to make sure that we're all on the same page. So when you click take quiz, it does not open. Let's see.
So, Andrea, it's Patrice. Yeah, it just doesn't open. I click on it and nothing.
Were you able to take the quiz last week?
Yes, I was.
But not this one?
Not this one.
Okay,
It's want you to know I'm here, but it won't open.
Okay, can you refresh the page and try clicking it again?
Sure. Nope. It's just, I see the black box that says take the quiz. I click on it and it doesn't open.
Okay, and you left click on, what browser are you using?
I'm using Firefox and I'm on a Mac, so I don't have a left click. I'm just double clicking.
Oh, only one click, not double.
Okay.
Let's see. Still nothing?
Well, nothing. I don't need to hold everybody up. I just wanted to let you know I wasn't able to access it.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking at your account. Yeah, when I click take the quiz, it actually allows me to click it. Can you refresh the page now? Do you see resume quiz?
I don't see resume quiz. I'm going back. I'm going to just go back into the chat and hit the link again.
You should see this. Monica,
oh, yes, it says resume quiz. Yes.
Let's click that.
Okay.
Do you see the questions now?
I don't. I see the resume quiz. I've clicked on it and it does not open.
And you used the same browser last time?
Yes.
That's odd. Yeah, I can't replicate the problem. That's why you're seeing resume quiz, because I was able to take the quiz. Do you mind trying later?
I don't mind at all. But if I
Okay.
don't have success, I just want you to know that.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome. Okay, let's see. We have some questions here. Okay, let's see here. Let's start with Beth asked if during a lockdown browser quiz, can a student download an image, draw on it, and then file upload? No, they will not be able to do that because they will not be able to open any app for drawing. If you expect them to do the drawing on their phone, for example, know that they can't take a lockdown browser quiz on their phone because there's no lockdown browser for a phone, whether it's iOS or Android. There is no lockdown browser for phones, only for iPads. And again, in the iPad, they wouldn't be able to access any of the tools to draw because that's another app and they wouldn't be allowed to run apps. So if you're using lockdown browser, keep in mind Zoom would also not be enabled because Zoom is another app that it has access to the internet, so it definitely would shut down Zoom. So again, if you want them to be able to ask you questions or ask for assistance during the quiz, then lockdown browser is probably not an option. And I'm promising you that on the third day, I will cover how I set up that feedback that you guys see during these practice quizzes. So we will cover that. I see a couple of people are curious about that. Monica was asking if you can see who completes it first. You can kind of see how long people took and when they completed it. It's kind of hard to tell who completed it first, especially if, for example, like us, you have 80 plus people in the course. It will be very hard to tell exactly who completed it first because they're all split across several pages.
And Andrea, I was thinking that I could use these review quizzes to get them to interact, review the material, but also count as attendance and participation. You think I'm wishing too much?
Yes, you can do that. You can have it as a participation kind of thing. Do keep in mind that even with 5 questions like this, it's usually a good idea to leave at least 10-15 minutes for something like this during the class time. And again, yes, it's great to count as participation because if it's a recap of what you've covered that day, it really you can see whether or not they were paying attention, you know.
Andrea, you're saying 15 minutes for 3 questions or 5 questions? I don't know how many you had in this quiz, but
I had 5 questions. So giving giving students 10 to 15 minutes, because you have to keep in mind that you have to make sure they're going to the right quiz, they're clicking on it.
Okay.
Some of them may be struggling, you know, with the browser, may need to open a different browser. There may be little hiccups, so giving a little bit more lead time. Most people finish this particular quiz in about 4 or 5 minutes,
Yes.
tops. So, but why I'm saying 10 minutes, for example, is because of all the other issues that might come up. Like if they're navigating to it, were they already logged into Canvas? They have to do that. They got to make sure they're on the right page. They might be clicking like Patrice, you know, they might be clicking the button. It might not happen. They might have to try a different browser. Things like that can happen. So giving a little bit more than just the minimum time for a recap quiz is not a bad idea.
But I thought you sent us to the quiz through chat, right? Did I do it right?
Yeah. But again, people
I-
can have problems.
Okay, so double the time. Okay, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
You're welcome. Let's see, where are we? Oh, so many questions. It is 11:59. So just to wrap things up, this is where we're ending the day. Again, towards the end of this week, hopefully sooner rather than later, we'll have a recording and a summary posted up for you for day 2. And then we'll see you again on day 3. If you want to stay to ask any more questions, please do. I'll stay for a little bit to see who has questions, make sure everything's answered. But if you need to leave, that's okay. And see you guys next Monday.
Andrea?
Yes.
Can you briefly go over the steps on how to import? I have test banks on my computer, my files. So can you just go on 1, 2, 3, the steps to import the test banks into?
First, I want to make sure that all the questions in the chat from earlier are covered, and then we'll look at that, okay? Let's see. Okay. Okay, I see. Unfortunately, I can't answer questions about any policies from the Faculty Senate. I do know that a lot of people do have points for attendance, for participation, and they do it in different ways, but I'm not sure what the exact policy or guidance is from the Faculty Senate. And someone wants me also to go over importing and exported.
Can I ask you a question?
Sorry? Yes?
Can I ask you a question? Would it be possible for me to import numerous test banks before I create quizzes?
Yes, you can import several question banks.
Before I create quizzes?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You import just the banks, and then when you're creating the quiz, you'll have that find questions button that will show you all your question banks.
Okay, so can you go over briefly, if you have time, how to import before I create the quizzes?
Okay, so we did cover this earlier, but I'll cover it again. So we'll cover first the importing. So when you go to settings page, okay, on the right hand side, if you're on course detail tab right at the top, on the right hand side is import course content. Now, again, what are you trying to import? If you're trying to import from one of your previous courses, then you would use copy a Canvas course.
No, I understand that. I would like to import from my files. So I have 2 or 3 test banks.
And what kind of format are they?
Yeah, I need to check, but now I forgot this step. Thank you so much. That's what I was missing.
So most publishers, you'd be using this option over here, QTI zip file. But some of them will give you a Blackboard file. That's also an option here. But again, most of them will give you this, the last option, a QTI zip file.
Okay. Yeah, I skip that one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So that's what the difference is, because the first option is for stuff from your own courses. And I know someone else had a question about exporting. Okay, and then I'll cover that question I just saw. So for exporting here, over here, exporting is mostly for you to share with other people, not yourself, because when it comes to your future courses, you can use import course content to access all your Canvas information from your past courses at CSUN. But export course content can create a package for you to share with other people or on a different platform. When you click export course content, it allows you to either export the full course or just quizzes. So you can export quizzes as well. So if you want to share with someone from not CSUN Canvas or from another teacher or something like that, you can choose to just export the quiz or the entire course and give it to someone else. It will be a file for you to share with the other person. So this is, exporting is mostly to share with other people, not yourself. And I also saw a question about how to share a link. So I'm going to go into student view in this course that we're in right here to show you how you can provide a link for this homework. So when you go to submit to this homework is a text box. So we're going to click submit assignment. So there's some questions here. So let's say you picked topic number 2. If you want to provide a link to something, right here you have a couple of options. You could just, you can answer the questions and provide all that, the actual text, and then at the end you want to provide a link. You can just copy and paste the link. So I'm going to choose a random link and I just paste the link right here, and that's it. I have the link right here. If I want to get fancy, I could put here is course link. I can just put some text. Then I highlight the text, and over here on the top, below the U for underline is a little link symbol. And when you click that, you can now paste any URL right here, any website, and click insert link. And now these words, course link, are the actual link. But you can just do this. You can just copy paste the link right in this text box, and that will include that link in there.
So Andrea, the link that we click, are we actually opening our own quiz in Canvas and then copying that URL?
Yes. If you're trying to link to me your quiz, your existing quiz, that's how you do it. You'd open the quiz and copy the URL at the top here and just paste that into here. That's it. Is that?
So you would be able to access it because it won't be, just because by virtue of signing into Canvas, you can access it?
The reason I can access it and Herbert can is we are both Canvas administrators.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Yeah. So that's why we set it. Yeah, so that's why we set it this way, because the two of us are Canvas admins, so we don't have any struggles with trying to access your information. Obviously, if we're not Canvas admins, then we'd need to ask you, to add us to the course or things like that. But that's not necessary because we are admins.
Perfect. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you. I see that Herbert has done a great job answering a whole bunch of questions as well. Yeah, you do not need to add us to your Canvas course. That is correct, Wendy. Making our lives easier. So the way, again, if you think you're ready to submit the homework, you go to the Quiz Bootcamp course. If you don't see it on your dashboard, you can click courses and then click all courses and just look for Quiz Bootcamp. You see I have a whole bunch of stuff here. I just look through and find Quiz Bootcamp Summer 2020 right here. And when you click on that, it will open the course, and the main page is the module page, and it's homework, quizzes, and you. And when you click that, you will see the information here, and you'll see at the top a submit assignment button. And when you do that, you'll get a text box where you can enter the information as well as a link to an existing quiz if you want to share that with us. And Stavros, of course, provided the direct link to the course as well. Thank you very much. So that is optional. It's not required. Oh, here what we're asking you is to let us know how you would improve, to talk about it. You don't necessarily have to link us the quiz. If you want to, that's why we showed you how to. If you want to, but you don't have to. The idea is for you to share with us, how do you think you would improve an existing quiz or survey of yours with everything you've learned in mind? You're welcome. And just to recap, I did not forget about importing the technology survey into your course. We unfortunately have to move that to the third day. I will be covering. I did not forget about it, but I was seeing that we were running a little bit out of time, and I wanted to make sure that you guys' questions were clarified and answered and covered first and foremost, and that people were able to leave at noon if they needed to. And let me know in the chat if you have any other questions. I do know that these practice quizzes, the point of them is for you to use them as a review tool and see the feedback and how that works, and also as a little review tool. Okay, we do not look at what grade you got or anything like that in terms of these recap quizzes, okay?
Andrea, the review quizzes are wonderful. And I wanted to just tell you that it really reinforces our learning. And if we don't make it punitive, then the students will be more likely to learn from them, you know?
Exactly. And you can see how it can provide them the feedback immediately to highlight, like, oh, this area, you might need some clarification, or you might want to go back on your notes or stuff like that.
That's what it made me do with the one that I missed. I was like, what? So then I realized what happened. Thank you.
You're welcome. So depending on how you inserted the image, that might be the reason why you see a link. I have created other quizzes with an image, and when I was previewing it, I did actually show the image. If we go into here, I can add a question. Yes, cut and paste does not quite work out with images. So let me show you how I do images. So I actually save whatever image I want to use on my computer first. So let's create a new question. So you can see this so let's say this is a multiple choice question. So first I make sure that I save the file on my computer. And when I'm ready to put in the image, I click over here where it says embed image. It's a little picture of mountains with a sun. It's right next to the link looking symbols. And when I click that, it allows me to either put in a URL. So if I'm using an image from some website, then that would be what I use. But most of the time, that's not what I'm using. So I click on the Canvas tab at the top. And because I want to make sure that nobody can see this image ahead of time, I like to put my quiz images into my files instead of the course files. But most people disable files in the course, so that's not a problem, but it's up to you where you choose to put it. I click my files. It's going to show me all the files I currently have, so I can just reuse one of my files over there, or I can click here where it says upload file. And when I click upload file, it takes me to my computer. So I'm going to pick this particular image here, and I'm going to click open. So now it's uploading it to Canvas. I have alternative text here if I want to. Example of a simple rubric. I'm going to call it that. And this is the size. I can make it smaller if I want. I am going to make it smaller. And this is now, you see here, it's right here under my files. Simple rubric. And I'm going to click update. And now here's the picture right here. I'm going to put just some random answers over here. So okay, I'm going to update the question. I'm going to save. Now we're going to preview this so you can see what it looks like. So when I preview, I'm going to scroll all the way to the end. And you can see there's the image that I put in. So again, I have to make sure that I upload the file. Make sure the size is what I want. And then I click the button to insert the image, and then it will show up for the students as well. Copy paste does not work. Drag and dropping does not work. You have to click the little mountain picture, then click Canvas tab, and then select, click upload file and select the file from your computer.
Can you do that with Bitmojis?
You'd have to save the Bitmoji as a regular file.
Yes, so but
You'd have. Yeah, you can do it. You save it first as a JPEG or PNG, whatever you can do, and then you upload it and put it in there as well.
Okay, I think I'm converting to using Bitmojis.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And again, when you are, I know I didn't recap today, but I just wanted to make sure I do remind you that we do have our Zoom drop-in and our phone lines available for you to call while you are doing something. So if you're struggling with putting an image into one of your quiz questions, do feel free to call us. You know, of course, if it's during the hours, call us or drop into the Zoom room that's listed on the Keep Teaching page to get help while you're having the issue, you know. And sometimes you will spend so much time trying to fight with the technology yourself, where maybe a 5-minute call would, you know, set you on the right path immediately. So do not be afraid to use these resources available to you.
Well, the beauty of this is that we have now background knowledge, so we can even ask the right question.
Yes, that is very helpful, of course.
Either way, I think it's a wonderful resource.
I'm glad. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions. Thank you, Herbert, for posting the link in the chat. Oh, that is not what I wanted to do.